Hey guys, it's Max. I appreciate you all for being here. I have what I hope is going to be an interesting video today. Friday the 13th. Let's see if I remember to share the screen. Yes, I did. All right. It's called What the Hell's the Matter with ULTY? What people don't get about ULTY. All right. So to TLDR, it got off to a bad start. Had a bad plan, you could even say. Covered calls, which is uncapped downside, but capped upside, kind of the worst of both worlds. Even though covered calls are a great investment for some, it didn't make a great ETF for this particular application, in my opinion. So we bitched about it. Everyone else did too, not just our channel. And about Yield Max. So then they fixed it. On Yield Max, they uncapped the upside. Dividends went down slightly as predicted, but total returns went up. On ULTY, they did a couple of different things on ULTY, but they were reactive to our concerns. For the most part, people are happy. So how can we prove this, or how can we look at this? So, in other words, how can I prove that it was just off to a bad start? And I don't know that I really can improve it 100% empirically, but I do want to make some comparisons. So a way a lot of technical analysis of the stock market takes place when you watch CNBC and you watch professionals, that lots of times they'll measure moves of stocks and of assets off of recent lows or recent highs or some significant point. Well, anyway, so what I did is we're going to look at some other competitors of ULTY and ULTY off of the August lows. August 6th was a major low, or 5th or 6th, whatever day was the low. Well, it was a major low. So let's start with some of the common ones that everybody loves. Let's start with maybe FEPI. I bet FEPI's beating ULTY, right? Oops. Sorry about your total return, FEPI. Yeah, FEPI's getting dogged. Okay. And nothing wrong with FEPI. FEPI's having a great year too. I mean, don't get me wrong. I never look at the reinvested, even though that's what a lot of people do. I just look down here, taking the dividends in cash. I mean, anyway. So since August, it's been a great run for ULTY, especially compared to FEPI. And FEPI is not like a weak comparison. FEPI is a traditionally strong fund with a lot of upside. All right. Well, anyway, let's see how it did to get some other ones. Oh man, look at that. So this is Defiance, and I love it. It's triple QT, which is a 20% target fund. They get a ton of upside. But even the mighty triple QT cannot touch ULTY. And guess what? ULTY yields 4 to 5 times what triple QT does. I mean, that's pretty impressive, ULTY. If you go off the August lows, they did get off to a bad start. I'm not excusing the bad start, but that's an impressive run off the lows. So look at this. I mean, people love SFOL, and SFOL is a great fund. I'm not dogging SFOL at all. It pays what, 20%. ULTY pays 80 to 100. So once again, ULTY pays more and total returns more than SFOL, and has been spanking it, off the recent lows. All right, well, look at this. Everybody loves iSpy. iSpy is great. What does it pay? 12%? Something like that? Yeah. Great fund. Gets a ton of upside. Not as much as ULTY, and it pays about a fourth. Everybody loves AIYY, and I went all the way back to the beginning on this one. I went to the inception of whichever one's the oldest. I just went back to inception. And yes, and this shows you ULTY's got off to a rough start. It's barely got its head above water, but it's been on fire lately. And it has appeared to pick up steam after the strategy change. We're going to talk about that a little bit in here. But you know, they're dogging AIYY, which is a great fund. AIYY just the past couple of days passed it. They had been beating it, but this last little up move, I didn't copy the slide. It was pretty much tied. AIYY had just nipped it lately. Now look at this one. You got to be freaking kidding me. It's beating the freaking Qs. The Qs are all upside and no yield. I mean, they yield what, 1% or something at 1.125, mainly because of Apple's dividend. I mean, and a few others. I mean, that's freaking amazing. It's beating the Qs. There's only one thing that could be more amazing than than beating the Qs off the recent lows. Only one thing I could think of to be more amazing, and that's if it was beating Q freaking DTE off the most recent lows. You got to be, it's totally throttling everybody's darling. QDTE. ULTY is having its way with the prom queen under the bleachers. I know it's a dark analogy. ULTY is spanking QDTE. It's also having its way with XDTE. And it yields way more than those two. But that goes for Defiance. It goes for everything. Not everything. Not everything. I shouldn't say that. All right. So there's good misconceptions on both sides. There's several misconceptions. The pro-alty side, the pro-high yield side, there's a misconception that because alty is now using a caller strategy, which is similar to a covered call, but it's a covered call with the addition of a protective put. I think the misconception is that because of this, they're immune from big drops in the NAV. That's kind of true. However, alty could drop about 10% on a really bad day, even with the callers in place, maybe 8%, something like that. It depends, but I was looking at it last night, and on a really bad day, now that hopefully won't happen. All right. In the old days, before the put options addition to the strategy, the caller, there's no telling how far it could have dropped, but it was way more than 10%. I mean, the new strategy is definitely a great idea, but it doesn't make it immune from dropping. I mean, it makes it immune from dropping maybe 50% in a day, which is good. I mean, but not immune from dropping 10% in a day. And I'm talking 10% if the NASDAQ drops 5% in a day, or even 3%. It'll drop way more than the NASDAQ because these are the most volatile stocks. That's why they're writing options in these stocks. That's the way it works. All right, so the put options are great. They control a little bit of risk. Like I say, in the old days, 50% would have been theoretically possible, or the way they used to have this fund constructed, it could have lost 25% in a day easily. Okay, no more. Anyway, so it is a step in the right direction, but that is a misconception coming from kind of my side of the camp. But like I say, it's way better than before. Okay, so on the other side, I get this one all the time, that it's a bad fund. Supposed to be a bullish fund in a bull market, yet it keeps losing. November, we got all excited. It got to the 1070s, then distribution, then it never recovered. So if it does the same in January, we'll be lucky to hold 9 after distribution. Better funds in the YieldMax universe. And I mean, he's not wrong. I think there's maybe one better fund, which is YMAX, but I don't know. I like alty also. But yeah, it's probably going to have to reverse split at some point. That's kind of the way these funds work. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to, but I mean, generally when they start getting in this range, they'll split them, and I think they'll probably run it up to 50 when they do. But anyway, it doesn't have to happen, but we'll see. All right. So the thing is, the reason though that it probably is likely to happen is because if you have an ETF that pays 100% yield, you need an underlying that's up twice that amount not to have any NAV depletion. So alty doesn't really have an underlying, but the stocks that represent them have to be up a cumulative 200% on the year, which can happen in a good year. My second favorite ETF lately is definitely YieldMax. YieldMax is a daily standout in the Buffer Report. I talk about it all the time. I bought some recently for account managed, but I would say whatever fund is in the YieldMax universe, it's good. at one time, 1 month, it can change from 1 month to another. Sometimes, because it depends on what underline's hot. These ETFs all do the same thing. It's all in the prospectus. It's mechanical, it's numbers, it's math. They don't vary that much. They don't vary near as much as I think that a lot of people think they do. That's a misconception on both sides. But I mean, and I would also say to the point about it just being a bad fund, that's why I was trying to show those slides. I mean, it has got off to a slow start for sure, but I don't know if you call it a bad fund because it's beating all those other funds that are good funds. It's not just being one or two of them and not just by a little bit. It's beating a lot of good funds badly. Now, I will say this, YieldMax, it didn't quite beat YieldMax. YieldMax had it even since August. YY had it, and so did YMAG. So, I mean, and of course, MSTY and the ones that you would suspect because they're beating everything. But of the index ones, it was one of the best that's diversified, one of the very best. But to know whichever fund is doing is going to be the next fund, you'd have to be able to predict the future is my point. So like I said, it's doing better in a bull market than a lot of funds. And also remember, we can't predict the future. What can you imagine if Kamala would have won? God forbid. It would have been great times for certain segments of the economy, solar stocks, vaccine related stocks. But unless you can predict the future, how would you know? Now, I will say that the fact that Jay Pestricilli, the fund manager of ULTY, was positioned on the right side of the Trump trade, even before the election, he had 2 or 3 Trump stocks and he had 1 solar stock, which he dumped the next day out of ULTY's portfolio. So, I mean, I think that's another case of ULTY being a decent investment. The fact that Jay was on the right side of the Trump trade. Now, there's no guarantee that he'll be on the right side of the trade in front of the next election, but that was good to see. And I think that's partially responsible for why the equity curve has been pulling away lately. That and the change in strategy. All right. So another big misconception, yield doesn't equal total return. We talk about this all the time. In fact, the more yield you get, the less total return, generally speaking. Not with ULTY. And just on about every slide I showed you, they were out total returning and out yielding. That's not the norm. That's not the norm. Generally, the high total yield stocks, as you guys know, generally are some of the lower total returns, and vice versa. Some of the ones that only yield 6 and 8%, like JEPQ, and there's a lot of them. There's some of your best total return, JEPI. All right. So that's just kind of the way it goes. But is ULTY breaking the matrix? I mean, it kind of would appear maybe so. So let's think. So when you have an ETF that yields 100, even though we understand we won't get the 100% in total return, most likely, and we realize we're going to get some of it. It depends on how the market does. All right. So don't plan on getting all of it. Plan on getting some of it. All right. Cases for ULTY. Okay. No other ETF can dynamically get in and out of positions as fast that I know of strategically. And look what they did right around the election. ULTY took its hymns and suffered no electoral dysfunction this year. Jay, like I said, he was in 1 solar stock and he dumped it. That's great. And all those strategy curves I showed you, they had taken off lately. Look at this. Just to refresh, there's ULTY compared to QDTE, and QDT's, is the GOAT lately of the index funds. It's murdering all the other index-based funds. Daily index funds. It's killing it. And T-SPY is doing really well too. And I compared ULTY to T-SPY, and ULTY's beating T-SPY just by about this much. Not by a lot, but it's beating it. And especially when you consider it, ULTY yields 3 times as much. It's not the way it's supposed to be. ULTY's doing something different. And like I say, I'm not comparing it to a bad fund. I'm comparing it to one of the best funds. And so now, it's only about 6 months, so it's, take that also with a grain of salt. We'll see how it does over a year. We'll see if it keeps it up, but it's been on fire lately. So, All right, come on, man. Do you know of any other ETF where the managers have this kind of leeway to jump in and out of stocks in a tactical basis? The thing I really love about this is the reason they're able to do this well and get away with it is because of the option selling program. Even if they pick a bad stock, they still earn the premium off the option trade. And now that they use puts also, they don't risk, that much money. So, the strategy's max loss is limited. I mean, what's not to like? Not to mention they can dump a stock if it sucks. They aren't married to any stock. Look at Yield Max, which I love. It's married to some stocks. It's married to MRNY right now. I mean, but also who cares with Yield Max, because that's kind of what indexes work. You're going to have some bad ones in indexes and you're going to have some good ones. You also have MSTY and some of the killer ones right now. So I'm not talking about Yield Max, but it is true that Yield Max is more likely to get married to a bad stock, in my opinion, than ULTY is. All right. So I used to talk about triple QI all the time. I even did spreadsheets on it. It was kind of state of the art. Then triple QT came out. Now it's QDTE's kind of state of the art. All right. We're going to talk about that some more in a second. I get this comment all the time. And I really like this dude. I'm not putting him on blast. He goes, Max, why are we pumping ULTY? The CTF was $15 6 months ago. Now it's $9.40. Income investors are getting destroyed. This trend of lower lows continues. And first of all, I just like to say, of course, I'm not pumping anything. I never even say like and subscribe. I don't have a Discord. I don't have any guide or anything to push. I don't beg for subs. Sometimes I don't even remember to put the little thing on the bottom of the screen that has my PayPal. And I don't tell people to go all in and they can retire in 6 months. If I did that, I would have a lot more subs and everything. Anyway, I'm trying to grow organically on purpose. And I want people like R. Martinez who are questioning what, if these things are real, and anyone else who's really trying to learn the ins and outs of these and the strategy behind these. So I go where the innovation is. So it was Defiance at the start. Defiance was the first to market with the daily index-based high yield ETF. To this day, it's the highest index-based yield that doesn't use leverage there's ever been, there probably ever will be. The high yield Karens, like me, have influenced the fund managers, for better or worse, to be more conservative, but at the same time be more aggressive, i.e. Yield Max has uncapped the upside while we at the same time had them cap the damn downside on ULTY. Retail wants everything. Retail wants all the upside and none of the downside. And the managers are doing the best they can. Usual caveats apply. No more than 20% of your overall retirement in these ETFs. Not that there's anything wrong with these, but there's tons of other great investments out there. I had a whole video on it the other day. There's great closed-end funds and great municipal funds. And of course, if Trump cuts taxes, the municipal funds aren't going to be valuable anymore. But anyway, they work under Democrats because they're tax-free. If you're a Democrat in a big city that makes a lot of money, you love municipal funds. Anyway, municipal bond funds. All right, but no more than 20%. Don't YOLO. Figure out how much income you really need to live off of for your retirement and buy just enough of this high yield to accomplish that goal, because these aren't without cost. Nothing is without cost. Any income-based investment on some level costs you future upside. Even if it doesn't look like it has erosion or whatever, just by the fact of you putting money in an income investment and taking it out of growth, you're potentially costing yourself money. So we always want to keep all our money in growth that we can, in my opinion. This is my experience. But a guy's got to live, right? Well, these high yield funds can definitely play a part in that. All right, guys, let me know what you thought in the comments. Like I say, I wasn't trying to put anyone on blast. I like R. Martinez and the other commenter just fine. But I just want to say ULTY's not doing half bad, especially lately. All right, see ya.